lost in the echo of their ominous flight.
All right, so let's dive into these drone sightings everyone's been talking about, especially all of you UAP fans out there. Swarms of these things, weird formations, all happening at night. I mean, you guys sent in a ton of articles on this, so you're obviously interested, hooked even.
I think what's really got people's attention is how they're all clustered around New Jersey. But then there's reports from like New York, Pennsylvania, even Connecticut. It's like someone's putting on a massive drone show and they're only doing it at night.
Yeah, and the details are what really get me. Witnesses are describing these things, doing stuff your average drone just can't do, like sudden stops, changing direction super fast, hovering in place, like they're breaking the laws of physics.
Well, let's try to map this out a bit. So the sightings are mainly in New Jersey, but like I said, it's spread to the states around it. And they're pretty much all happening at night, in evening or later. That pattern of activity in the dark is definitely a big part of what makes this so weird.
Okay, so weird drones doing weird things over a pretty big area, mostly when everyone's asleep. So what are the authorities saying about all this? I bet you're all wondering who's behind it, right?
Well, this is where things get interesting. Multiple agencies are investigating. The FBI, Department of Homeland Security, FAA. They're all looking into it. But as of today, December 16th, 2024, nothing. No official explanation.
Silence from the authorities.
Yeah.
Always makes you wonder, is it just them being quiet, or is there more to it?
It does make you think. I mean, sometimes in these situations, being quiet is more telling than actually saying something. It could just mean they're still early in the investigation, and they need more info, but the longer it goes on, the more it makes people speculate.
And boy, is there speculation. I've seen everything. People worried about smuggling, terrorist plots, and of course the alien theory. Some are even talking about Project Bluebeam.
Well, it makes sense though, doesn't it? When there's no information, people kind of fill in the gaps themselves. And let's be honest, the idea that these drones are alien probes is way more exciting than, say, some corporation doing shady surveillance.
Yeah, alien tech is always cooler.
Oh, right.
But let's try to stay grounded here. You sent over some articles with some other possibilities. So before we go full UAP, let's look at some of the more realistic explanations, even if they're a little less exciting.
I think that's a good approach. After all, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, right? So let's start by looking into those less exciting scenarios, more probable ones. So one possibility is that some of these drones are doing environmental monitoring. They might have sensors to detect things like gas leaks or changes in radiation levels, stuff that's important but not super exciting.
Okay, so like flying lab assistants but without the lab coats. I can see that. Are there any environmental issues in the areas where the sightings are happening that would explain this?
That's a really good question. Actually, yeah. There have been some concerns about air quality in parts of New Jersey, especially near industrial areas. So it's not a crazy idea to think some of these drones could be collecting air samples or checking pollution levels.
Right, so maybe not aliens, but still important. What about the spying angle? Those articles you sent mentioned. People were worried about that.
Right, that wouldn't be surprising at all. I mean, think about it. We've got law enforcement, private companies, even foreign governments, all using drones to get information.
And the tech is getting so advanced, they could probably spy on us without us knowing. That's a little creepy.
It is a bit unsettling, especially when you think about how it could be abused. And in this case, the fact that they're flying at night, often in formations, really raises the stakes. It seems like it takes a lot of planning and coordination, which is definitely concerning.
Okay, so we've got environmental monitoring and surveillance. What about just really advanced hobbyist drones, like some next-level drone club messing around?
It's possible, I guess, but it doesn't seem likely. Most hobbyist drones have limited range, and their batteries don't last that long. And you don't really see them flying in formations at night, plus all those weird movements people have described. That's not something your average drone enthusiast can just do.
Yeah, true. It does feel like something more organized is going on, maybe even a little sinister. And that brings us to the question a lot of our listeners probably want to ask. Could this be UAPs?
Well, it's easy to think that, especially with the strange flight patterns, and no one from the government saying anything. But we have to be careful about jumping to conclusions.
I get it. We want to be open to the idea.
Yeah.
But we don't want to just blame aliens every time something weird happens.
Exactly. So how do we think about this UAP question? While still being skeptical, I think we need evidence. Evidence that's more than just, it's strange, so it must be aliens.
Okay, so what kind of evidence would we need to make it more likely that it's UAPs? What would make you say, okay, this is really out of this world?
For me, it would come down to a few things. First, the way they fly. If these drones are going at speeds or doing maneuvers, that we just don't understand. With the laws of physics we know, that would be a big sign. Think about those tic-tac UAPs the Navy pilots saw, moving in ways no aircraft could.
So like instant acceleration, right angle turns, disappearing and reappearing. Stuff that would make Elon Musk say, what?
Exactly. And then there's the technology. If these drones were using signals or propulsion systems, that we just can't identify. That would also point to something unusual.
So we're looking for evidence that basically says, this isn't human tech.
That's a good way to put it. And remember, just because we don't have a normal explanation doesn't mean it's automatically UAPs. It just means we need to keep investigating, keep asking questions, and stay open-minded.
All right, so even if these drones aren't aliens, they're still pretty creepy. And they raise some serious concerns, right?
Definitely. It doesn't matter who's behind them. These drones show us we're vulnerable, especially when it comes to national security. Imagine a foreign government, or even just a really organized group. With this kind of drone technology, they could cause a lot of problems.
Yeah, like imagine these things swarming around power grids. Or airports, that's kind of a nightmare.
And it's not just about physical attacks. They could be used for spying, too. Getting secret info without anyone knowing.
Right, it's like a whole new world of spying, but with tiny robots, instead of guys in trench coats hiding cameras.
Exactly. And the scariest part is we're not that great at defending against this kind of thing. The usual radar systems don't always work on these small drones. They fly too low, and we're still figuring out how to track and stop them.
So are we basically sitting ducks?
Not quite. But we do need to improve things. That's why people are working hard to develop new tech, like better radar systems, special sensors to detect drones, and even systems that can disable or capture them.
So it's like a new arms race, but with drones instead of missiles.
That's a good comparison. And it's not just about the tech either. We need new strategies, new laws, and even agreements between countries to deal with this new threat.
So it's not enough to just shoot down drones. We need to figure out the rules for this whole new kind of conflict.
You got it. And we need to talk about it now, before things get worse. Because the longer we wait, the more vulnerable we are.
All right, so we've talked about national security, but these drones also make people worry about their privacy, right? With all these cameras and sensors getting smaller and more powerful, it feels like our privacy is disappearing.
You're absolutely right. And this is where things get really complicated. On the one hand, drones can be used for good things, like inspecting bridges, delivering packages, even search and rescue. But on the other hand, they can also be used for surveillance, to collect data, and even to harass people.
So how do we find the right balance? How do we keep our privacy, but still let people use drones for good things?
That's the big question, and there's no easy answer. It's going to take new laws, ethical guidelines, and new technology.
So maybe we need stricter rules about what kinds of cameras drones can have, and limits on where they can fly. And people need to be more open about who's operating them and why.
Exactly. We need to make sure drones are used in a way that's transparent, accountable, and respects people's privacy. And this needs to happen everywhere, from local towns to the national government to organizations around the world.
So it's not just about making better drones, it's about making a better system for how we use them and how we live with them.
Exactly. We need to accept that drones are here to stay and figure out how to make them benefit everyone, not just a few.
It really feels like we're at some kind of turning point with all this whole drone thing. It's not just about some new technology, you know. It's about figuring out how we deal with this new world where the sky is a lot more complicated.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. We're having to rethink all these ideas we have about airspace, about privacy, about who or what might be watching us, and like we've been talking about. Even if these New Jersey drones are something normal, they've still made us think about some big questions.
You're like, what if those more out there explanations were true? What if we really are sharing the skies with something we don't understand? Would we even be ready for that?
That's where it gets really interesting, in a philosophical way, I mean. Even if these drones are just some really advanced technology made by someone here on Earth, they're still making us think about the unknown. They're making it harder to say what's possible and what's not.
It's like we're already living in a sci-fi movie in some ways. Drones delivering packages, self-driving cars everywhere. What's next? Teleportation. Aliens landing on the White House lawn. It feels like the impossible is becoming more and more possible.
I think that's a really important point. Whether these drones are UAPs or not, the effect is the same. We have to start thinking bigger. And consider that the world might be a lot stranger than we thought.
So maybe it's not aliens this time, but maybe next time. Or maybe it's something even weirder than aliens.
Exactly. And that's what makes this time so exciting. Technology is changing so fast, who knows what's next? But one thing's for sure, we have to be ready to adapt, to question everything we think we know, and to be open to things we never expected.
Okay, so let's recap. Mysterious drones. The government isn't saying anything, lots of theories, and a whole lot of unanswered questions. But for our listeners today, what's the one thing you want them to take away from all this?
If I had to choose one thing, I'd say don't ignore the unknown, these drones. Whether they're normal or something truly extraordinary, they remind us that the world is full of mysteries, and that's something to be excited about, not afraid of.
I like that. It's like a reminder to stay curious, to keep asking questions, and to never stop exploring.
Exactly. And that's what a good deep dive is all about, isn't it? Exploring the unknown, challenging what we think we know, and coming out of it with a new sense of wonder.
Well said. And on that note, I want to thank you all for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it as interesting as we did. And remember, keep looking up, keep asking questions, and keep an open mind. Till next time.
Shadows shifting, something in the air tonight. Ain't no stars but a flicker in the pale moonlight. Humming low, a mechanical ghostly moan. Metallic birds, silhouettes against the unknown. They watching us, these eyes that pierce the soul. Autonomous flight, escaping all control. No pilots, no strings, just circuits and a code. A digital phantom on a path predisposed. Is it the government or something more obscene? A corporation's gaze on this mundane scene. The paranoia creeping like a vine up the wall. Who's pulling the strings? Who's destined to fall?